So I wanted to do a quick breakdown video of this patch, which is pretty exciting. I love a lot of the stuff going on in here. Before we get into the melody and rhythm sections for this one, I wanted to talk about a few changes I've made to my rack. So first of all, I moved FX Aid up to the top. I was struggling too much to reach the knobs down in this kind of thicket of wires. So now they're easier to manipulate. And also you might notice I've changed the knobs out. So I went with some, I did an order of some knobs, got some Rogan 1P unskirted, 3D shaft 1 T18 for the FX Aid. Those feel really nice. They're smaller than the skirted ones. I think Make Noise modules use these more often, but they also match the kind of mutable modules I have. So that was a nice change. The other thing I did is, you can't really see it, but down here, HPO's volume knob is like half the length of a normal trimmer knob, and it doesn't have the painted white stripe on it. So I went ahead and got some of Thonk's tall trimmer toppers of different colors, put a black one on that. It kind of barely fit over it, but it still grips it and works pretty well. So now it's taller and it has the white line. I'm also gonna start to put these on certain trimmers that I'm gonna wiggle. So for example, in the opening there, you might have seen me manipulating the ring structure knob. So pink trimmer to match the pink CV wires. Really nice, I like these a lot. Aside from kind of moving stuff around and changing some knobs, the other thing I struggled with in the last patch was tuning Blade's analog oscillator. So for this one, I went ahead and racked my data in a little kind of Erica Synths Pico 42 HP case here. And I'm just having it in tuner mode. And the way that I tune my modules is I'll take out the voltage per octave CV input. So specifically for something like rings. And let's take one of its output channels, excuse me, mult it into here. So we can still hear it going through the rack, but we'll get kind of its first tonal character out into the tuner function of data. And if we strum it, you see it's playing a C4 with no V-oct input. For a lot of the mutable modules, if you're not putting CV into their frequency in, you can use the trimmer here to do fine tuning adjustments. So here you can see that counterintuitively, like when I have this low, it goes sharp. And when I bring it to the center, it's kind of back. And so I've worked with the coarse tuning on the frequency knob and then this one to get it into this register. So put strum back in. Let's move on to the second melody module that we'll be working on, which is tides. Sounds something like this, but remember it has a V-oct signal going in. So first we want to unplug that and then mult this into our tuner. I'm sorry about that. And we see that it's tuned to a C3. Again, I don't have anything plugged into the frequency CV of tides, so you can hear its trimmer goes a semitone up and a full semitone down, which is cool. But I actually have it in its kind of default setting, which is a C3. So just tuning everything to C. We'll plug this back in. And then we'll unplug bass for now. And finally, we want to tune the ukulele. These things go out of tune really easily. So over here in ears output. So the tuning for the ukulele is C4, a G4, little flat, an E, and that A, which can go out of tune really easily, this lowest string. And tune it a little sharp, and it will go out of tune throughout the track. So now that we have everything in tune, move that away. And we can start to go through the different modules here. So let's start with melody, because the way that this song worked is I started with the ornament and crime over here in sequence mode to make a sequence. And so I'm going to be using that melody. It's kind of a, I think it's 4 16th note sequences that just are static throughout the whole track. And they're going to be sending their rhythm to rings and then their melody line to rings and tides. Let's start with rings and hear what this sounds like a little bit. So this is just the rhythm of this. And whenever I'm playing this in the track, I'm going to use the structure to add a little something extra to it, like this, which is just an LFO coming from stages to the structure knob. But this isn't that interesting. When we get into the verse, we're gonna add the V-oct. Oops, not that one yet. So this is the primary melody. But as you might have noticed, I have another kind of pink V-oct CV coming out of marbles. What's happening is the V-oct coming out of ornament and crime is getting kind of added over here in Link's 2-to-2 kind of accurate adding module. And it's going to be adding together this melody that we're getting out of ornament and crime with a kind of random looping melody coming out of the X2 of marbles. So it makes it a little bit more complex for kind of verses. I can still add the structure LFO change to it. You might also be noticing that Rings has a specific kind of sonic character. It's distorted a little bit. That's because the outputs of Rings are going into Kink's logic. So it's kind of an audio rate analog logic function that's taking, looks like the minimum out and sending that to Veils for mixing and then out to nearness for panning. So that's basically how the guitar works. Let's calm that down a little bit and bring in the bass. So the bass's pitch CV is also coming from Ornament and Crime, but I'm kind of splitting out the signal. Half of it is going to Link's 2x2 for adding with marbles and then going to Rings. The other half is going down to Kink's sample and hold as the primary signal. Kink's is being triggered by this beat from Pamela's new workout, which I think, yeah, is just, let's actually look at it really fast. Number 6. So it's divided by 8, so it's more or less 4 beats per note in a halftime. And I've tweaked the sequence so that even though Rings kind of dips into kind of minor key, like A minor, whenever this beat comes out to the sample and hold, it's snatching an element of Rings' melody in a major key and sending that to tides for our bass voice. You can also double this. So we're grabbing now twice as often part of this primary melody, playing it on the bass. This, of course, still works with the guitar melody, but it changes the character a little bit. It's like more sentimental. And so those will be the 2 big bass changes. Sometimes it's hard to flip this mid-song. I was trying to actually get it to do a sequential switch with stages, and it didn't have the voltage coming out of Pam's to kind of trigger Kink's gate sample and hold the way I wanted it to, so I'm just going to be doing it manually during the middle of the song. For both of these melody modules, there's some modulation coming in. You can hear this at the end of a phrase. And it gets a little crunchier. Likewise, I think the dampening here opens up at the end of each phrase, so there's some kind of modulation going into links that's going to be building phrasing for all the different elements. The final melody, aside from the bass and the guitar, is of course the ukulele. Let's do that next. Gonna just unplug these for now. So the ukulele is interesting. I didn't want it to just sound like the kind of standard plinky ukulele. So what I'm doing is I'm taking it into ears for amplification. You can hear my voice through this a little bit, so it's a little distracting for me, so we'll turn it off when I'm done. But it's actually using, it's gonna send it out into Blades, the second part of it. And then after Blades, it's going to send it into, I think maybe just, oh yeah, okay, we're doing something a little complex here where we're going to mix it in blinds, actually, in the fourth channel of blinds. But the envelope follower of ears is going to be opening up the frequency of Blades. So every time this plays, it's also the envelope's being inverted by kinks. So the louder the envelope is, the lower the frequency, and then it will kind of open up. So we get this like wah-wah effect. And of course, that's being wave folded and overdriven by Blades. So this is like a really cool way to add character to an acoustic instrument like the ukulele. The other thing going on here is, besides this wah-wah effect, there are some implications of sending an inverted envelope follower to the frequency, and that's that you can make a few other textures with this. So you'll see me making this texture a little bit. Kind of like water droplets, like they kind of start low and get high. And then sometimes I'll do something like this. So again, no transient. It kind of slowly, the envelope is like reverse on this, but it's based off of the kind of sound coming into ears. It's actually the first time I've used the envelope follower with ears, so this was kind of cool to get this working. And of course, the character of this sound, whereas Rings is kind of getting its character from the logic of kinks, Tides is getting its character from its specific kind of wave folding, and the manipulation of its waveform that it does to itself. Here, the ukulele is getting its character from Blades. So if we have all these things together, so that's our melody section. I guess the only other thing I do with the ukulele that we'll see in the performance is I have a little solo section where I use just tapping on it. So you gotta be careful to kind of hit those right. The fun thing about this is it's so quiet that it doesn't get the wah effect. It kind of slips, the envelope follower, its transient is so low that it slips under the limit and then kind of comes through Blades cleanly. So the other big thing going on here is the drums. The drums take up a lot of this. I wanted to kind of build this patch around a specific drum beat. So let's deconstruct that now a little bit. Let me see if I can get this going. We'll start off kind of, actually, let's listen to what we've got and then we'll take everything away. So this is the drum beat that we start off with. And there's a lot going on, so I think what we'll do is we will turn off our reverb, turn off our whatever's going on with beads, take away this effect, take away this modulation, and even take away its filtering. Let's plug it in like this instead. And maybe we'll even take away this rhythm. So we start. We actually start with something like this. And what's going on here is we just have marbles sending out a drum pattern. I did this in a lot of my patches. And that drum pattern is going out to blinds. And these are just gates. So the drums will be kind of lime and orange colored as we follow them through. These gates, I'm attenuating them and summing them with blinds and then sending this to change the model of Plaits. So Plaits is generating our drum sounds. That's being sent into beads, that's being sent into FX8, and that's being sent out into veils for mixing and then nearness for panning. But the first thing to make this drum interesting, this is just a locked loop on marbles, is I'm changing the rate with a gate coming out of Pam's. And this is designed to go with the melody. So listening to the melody, I kind of wanted the drums to have this specific speed up in the middle of them. So it's like kind of 2 beats and then a faster little breakbeat pattern. Sounds pretty good. Then we wanted to send them to get some filtering. So let's do this. The way this is working, I love doing this now. I started doing this on the Papu Blossoms track, but I multed out the same gates over to blades to change the, not only filter its frequency using actually a, I think this is a high pass filter tuned to the specific frequency. I think it's just a C, kind of a low C for the drums. With the little resonance notch in there, but I'm also sending these gates out to frequency and to resonance to change the resonance and make it big for this low bass drum sound, and to change the frequency for the snare to make it snappy. So we kind of have this snappier texture. Up, we're gonna send this single channel audio to beads, add a little reverb. And then beads is going to be kind of chopping up this pattern in real time. And it's a very subtle effect. So this is what it sounds like. It's just kind of, it's staying in sync with it, but adding like a little bit of a gritty texture. So nothing super fancy with the default setting of beads. Just adds like a little something extra into it. But when we start to modulate beads, we're going to be sending the same signal that we're modulating the dampening of rings and I think also the smoothing of tides. We might also be sending that same signal to tides slope to kind of get that gritty bass sound. But we're going to send that to increase the wetness, the reverb, and the feedback of beads. And you can do that through all one input and then attenuate each CV signal individually. So at the end of each phrase, we're going to get this kind of cool textured ramp with some reverb. And you can change like the speed of this. So if we want it kind of poppier and slower, we can change the density down a little bit. If we want it kind of super smooth, we could increase the density. And so you can start to hear that if you increase the density a lot, we can actually change these granular kind of sounds into an audio rate signal on their own. And so that's one thing I explore in the second half of this patch is increasing the density all the way, increasing the pitch all the way, and then sending a Vox signal to the density right here from marbles. So along with the bass drum, we're going to be changing notes of this audio rate, granular, synthesized, kind of glitchy signal. Which sounds great. I mean, this is kind of a cool thing to throw into our drum sound, is we can actually get this little melody line going, which is going to be in tune with everything else, because when your density is all the way up, this is tuned to a normal Vox rate. And so as long as our kind of pitch and everything is in tune with everything else, we're going to get these kinds of signals. The other thing we're adding here is, and I'll take this away, is the effects from FX8. So FX8 in this patch is dedicated to doing this radio tuning effect that takes the audio rate drum signal and then simulates as if you're kind of twisting the knob on a radio. I like how this fills in this kind of like crunchy high texture in between the beat. So whenever there's not a transient, we hear this radio come through, and this sounds really cool all combined. This set back to the way it normally is. Oh, and I wasn't even doing the sweeps. So with the sweeps in there, we get these kind of cool melodic lines. Okay, so a lot of stuff going on with the drums in this patch. Let's get this set up right, and we'll look at the final percussive element before trying a playthrough. That sounds good. So aside from the drums, there's one more element in this song, and that is the vocal chops. This sample, I think, was just a kind of improvised vocal lick in D minor. So I was able to kind of pitch it up, get a little bit of like an auto-tune kind of pitch up flavor on it, send out to chop it up based on its transients, send out two Euclidean rhythms to our Disting NK4, which has these samples kind of sitting on it. Those are being mixed by Plonks here. Instead, I ran out of channels on Veils, so they're just going to be mixed here. But the other thing going on is they are getting, it looks like this attenuated signal using Blind's third channel from Stages. So Stages in this patch is just getting kind of the standard rhythm BPM, the 168 BPM, multed to its three final segments, and then each of those is sending out an LFO. Here, this LFO is attenuated by blinds and controlling which sample is playing. So if we play this together with the drums, and that D minor vocal lick, I think I just raised it a fifth, so it's an A minor along with the C major elements and the A minor elements of this particular track. So I think those are all the elements. Let's kind of reset the patch and get into it. Maybe we can perform this. So we're gonna take out the ramp. We're gonna have this kind of not pitched up yet. Turn those off. Have that all the way up. Make sure our VOct is out here, our texture is out here. Oh, I forgot to put in the freeze, so we'll hear that in the track, but I also have freeze coming out in a Euclidean pattern, matching one of the vocal chops so that we get even more texture in the drums. So even as we're kind of late into the description here, I'm forgetting specific elements that I had planned, but it'll come out in the performance. So let's try it out. Trying to remember if there's anything I'm missing, if there's anything I'm forgetting, or if anything is set incorrectly at the start of this, but I think we're okay. Probably need to plug in a few things. Okay, and it's really important with sequence. This is what I kind of messed up in my last explanation, was sequence has to be set so that when you first turn on the beat, the first gate that comes out of this starts the first note of the sequence that you're working with. So in this case, so kind of warming up the audience to hearing this guitar texture and this bass texture with a little bit of the fussing, and then we'll bring everything in. Drums first. I like to give kind of two little verses here. And I should be remembering to turn the kind of structure on rings to kind of spice those up a little bit. Here we'll go like this. And the ukulele is supposed to be subtle. Plugging in the extra bit from marbles, so we'll get a more complex texture here. Bring everything in again. Now we have the ramp effect coming, so we should start to hear that. So I like to add a little bit extra each verse that we go. So this one has the extra molted signal from marbles helping out rings. And then this, and then keep the ukulele the same. This next transition is really tricky, so be ready for it. Let's see if I can get it. Oof. Missed it a little bit. Here we're supposed to change the bass and bring in the vocals for the first time. Hear that twice. Getting ready to try and play the solo here. this track, sorry, I wasn't talking too much because I was trying to get the ukulele part down, but for the end of this track, I like taking out the guitar and the bass part because we've heard those so much throughout it, and just leaving this drum texture here. Kind of like a dance beat ending. You can even increase the reverb as we go. And I'm using an offset from stages down here to control the volume on veils. Just makes it a little more ergonomic. Here we go. Cool. Interesting. So at the end of this track, I neglected to bring down the bass quick enough, but we're kind of left with whatever radio texture is kind of left in FX8. And depending on what that is, sometimes it's this high crunchy sound. Like this. Which is good. Like, I like to kind of fade out on this type of sound since it's been in the background for the whole song. Sometimes it can be these lower or more muted sounds. One thing that I didn't play too much in the patch, but let's listen to before we stop the video, is that final drum situation with the vocals. No guitar and bass, but the freeze in there, which is a Euclidean pattern matching the vocals. So let's listen to that for a second. So we're almost ending with just the kind of percussive elements of the song kind of hanging out without the ukulele, guitar, or bass. So that's the patch. I almost hate to kind of start to unplug it because I like the beat so much. But yeah, we'll make another patch next time. Maybe something a little bit more down-tempo or ambient. There we go.